Nelson Mandela explained, "For decades, black people in South Africa were denied of their basic human rights and freedom due to racial segregation and discrimination enforced by the apartheid government policies. Racial segregation divided the nation, but from a small village called Mvezo, a young boy named Nelson Mandela would rise to challenge this system. His name would inspire millions of people worldwide to take up arms for freedom and equality. He would eventually become the symbol of that struggle." This is the story of Nelson Mandela and how his vision transformed the nation and changed the course of history. Nelson Mandela was born on July 18, 1918 in the village of Mvezo in Umtata, then part of South Africa's Cape Province. Nelson Mandela was the son of Chief Henry Mandela of the Mandiba clan of the Xhosa-speaking Tembu people. After his father's death, young Nelson Mandela was raised by Jongin Taba, the regent of the Tembu. As a young boy, Nelson Mandela attended a mission school where he received basic education. In 1937, at the age of 19, he enrolled at the University of Fort Hare, the only university for black students in South Africa at the time. He was interested in politics and law, and he was elected to the Students' Representative Council. However, his studies were cut short when he was expelled for his involvement in a student protest. In 1944, at 26 years, Nelson Mandela joined the African National Congress, a political party that sought to end racial discrimination and segregation in South Africa. For nearly 5 decades, a system of racial segregation called apartheid gripped South Africa. This system enforced white supremacy, denying basic rights and freedom to the majority of the black population. The seeds of apartheid were sown during colonization. Dutch settlers established a hierarchy with themselves at the top. This racial division solidified under British rule and continued when South Africa gained independence. In 1948, the National Party came to power and implemented apartheid as official policy. Laws were passed to classify people by race, restrict movement, and deny black citizens the right to vote. Apartheid had a devastating impact on black South Africans. They faced limited opportunities, forced removals from their land, and constant discrimination. Resistance movements arose, met with harsh repression by the government. Mandela became a vocal opponent of these policies. He helped organize protests and strikes against apartheid, and in 1952, at the age of 34, he was elected Deputy National President of the ANC. He also co-founded the ANC Youth Wing, which played a key role in the fight against apartheid.
The Africans want the franchise on the basis of one man, one vote. They want political independence.
As the apartheid government became increasingly oppressive, Nelson Mandela and other members of the ANC began to explore more radical forms of resistance. In 1961, the ANC launched a military wing called Mkhonto Wesizwe, MK, and Mandela became its commander-in-chief. MK carried out a campaign of sabotage against the apartheid government, including bombings and other acts of violence. In 1963, Mandela was arrested and put on trial for treason, along with other ANC leaders. During the trial, which lasted over a year, Nelson Mandela gave a 3-hour speech that came to be known as the "I am prepared to die" speech. Nelson Mandela's speech from the dock, in which he admitted the truth of some of the charges made against him, was a classic defense of liberty and defiance of tyranny. In it, he said,
"I have fought against white domination. I have fought against black domination. I have cherished the ideal of a free, democratic society where all persons live together in harmony with equal opportunities. It is an ideal which I hope to live for and achieve. But if needs be, it is an ideal for which I am prepared to die."
After the trial, Nelson Mandela and other ANC members were sentenced to life in prison. While in prison, Nelson Mandela became a symbol of resistance and hope for the South Africans and people all around the world. Nelson Mandela was thrown into the brutal prison in Robben Island. He spent the first 18 years of his 27 years in jail there. Going through hard labor and being confined in a small cell, he was later moved to Victor Vesta prison, where he lived under house arrest. He refused to be broken by the harsh conditions of prison life, and he continued to fight for justice and equality from behind bars. In prison, he read and studied extensively, and he earned a Bachelor of Law degree. He also continued to lead the ANC from prison, communicating with other leaders through secret letters and messages. His imprisonment lasted 27 years, but his resolve never wavered. In 1990, after years of international pressure, the apartheid government announced that Nelson Mandela and other political prisoners would be released. On February 11, 1990, Nelson Mandela walked out of prison a free man. The world watched as he greeted the cheering crowds, and he vowed to continue the fight for a democratic South Africa. In 1991, he was elected president of the ANC, and he led negotiations with the apartheid government to end the apartheid and bring about a democratic South Africa. In 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections. Nelson Mandela was elected as the country's first black president, and he set about healing the divisions of apartheid and building a new South Africa. He introduced a new constitution that enshrined equality and human rights for all. He also established the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, which aimed to heal the wounds of apartheid through truth and forgiveness. While his presidency was not without challenges, he's widely credited with leading South Africa through a peaceful transition to democracy. In the years following his presidency, Nelson Mandela remained a beloved and respected figure in South Africa and around the world. He continued to work for peace and human rights, and he received numerous awards and accolades, including the Nobel Peace Prize in 1993. He also remained active in public life, and he continued to speak against injustice and inequality. On December 5th, 2013, Nelson Mandela passed away at the age of 95. His legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of people around the world.